this was explicit in everyone's origin story. We all Dubai kids. Higher college?
Dubai National.
Dubai National,
Dun,
our
dun,
own.
dun. I don't know how much you know about it, but
Wait till you find out my school. But our own, Modern High, another our own. And not surprised, Aaron always wins the numbers game, but never wins anything else, unfortunately. But as someone who's grown up in Dubai and has watched Dubai grow up as well, and as someone who's not just watched the evolution of art and culture, but also caused the evolution of art and culture. You just spoke about the unique stories that Dubai has to offer. So let's explore that. What has it been like to watch the evolution of art and culture over the last few decades? As an additional prompt, are you sick and tired of people coming up to you and saying, oh, I don't know, Dubai has a theater scene, has a cinema scene. Oh, there's nothing to do, feels fake and artificial.
There's a theater here?
There's a theater. If you are sick and tired of it, help me right now in creating a love letter for all those people who are one Google search away from finding these wonderful worlds. What is the state of art and culture in Dubai? And then what was it like to watch it unfold over the last few decades?
look, as somebody that partakes in, in a constant cycle of like self-flagellation, doing what I do, there is something masochistic about opening an art house cinema in a city like this. And I guess, what you respectively do in your spaces. I do get frustrated by it, but at the same time, I understand it. Because Dubai still doesn't lead with that. Like as much as we know, because we're in it, we're in the game and we know each other and we have found our people, it does not outwardly place itself as, a city of that kind of value for culture and cultural experiences, and I think it's a conveyor belt city, as much as I'm a child of the city through and through. I grew up near the Iranian hospital, went to school here, we talked all about the textures of the different cinemas that I, frequented and other places, we saw it come to life. And that's why I think it's our role as well to be very realistic and almost critical, about the things that really, get lost in the mix. There is now a sense, at least in terms of the diversity of the city, that's becoming a very big part of the language around how the city talks about itself. And I think that's incredibly important because when we first started our work, a lot of the work was around that, is around, looking at the diversity as a departure point, as a gift. And it's not just a nice marketing, number of 200 plus nationalities living in harmony, right? It's like, really, what does that mean? What kind of people does it create? What kind of memories do we have? What kind of flavors have we experienced? And beyond the sort of superficial or consumerist element of that, how is that integrated into even what is Dubai culture like, right? Not the entity, Dubai culture itself. What kind of people does it generate? And also the diversity of that experience, because, going to middle class, private school educated, kids that end up doing the, XYZ kind of business careers or real estate or whatever your family's into is a very different experience than somebody that grew up in a, lower income bracket in the city and still spent their entire life here. And I think that part is still we don't reckon with it as much, and we're still, and there aren't a lot of avenues to do it. And the other side of that is, so I understand. I still understand why, the curiosity is sometimes not there, because it also doesn't try to attract people that are looking for the arts and culture spaces. And then, I think post-COVID, though, there was, and I don't know if you felt it in your own spaces, but we certainly felt post-COVID, there was a new generation of people, that came with their, whether it was facilitated by the Golden Visa program and all these programs that allowed people to, really consider Dubai as a base. I think, we had a lot more curio and a lot more diversity in terms of the people, the type of profiles. Before we would dream of having a script writer that comes here or, a fiction writer. Nobody's here unless they're running away from something or trying to hide to write the rest of their script. Or transiting somewhere, or their aunt lives here. That's why they have to come and visit, right? So now you're actually seeing that. I think those people are still struggling to find what is their space. And I think, we try to create those moments of community, but we're still, a long way to go in terms of really creating that fabric, beyond the checklist of things you should check out. I'm very, very, very proud, of where we are now. I'm very proud of institutions like at the junction. I'm learning about, and I'm so amazed, to discover ones that maybe I didn't hear about, or didn't know about, being somebody that's in the space, and to see all these different attempts actually like bear fruit, to see them continue. And I always get asked this question in interviews, like, what's next? I'm like, in a place like this, there's no what's next. It's like keeping it running is what's next,
Yeah.
Like keeping the doors open, being able to upgrade our ACs. That's what's next, As much as that sounds unambitious and there's always other projects and other things, but this is the foundation. Like you can't create a revolution, without like the ship itself running, and that's I think the big part of how it's different.
Because you're shaping the audience and the consumer as well. There is no standard way of doing it. And in theater, I see it. I don't know if you guys see it in your fields as well. People come in with expectations of standard. This how theater happens back home where I'm from. Dubai is different. The consumers are different. This worked in, and the shortest way to fail that I found with when I opened up the junction 10 plus years ago was to say, oh, this works in Liverpool, it'll probably work over here. No, it's not. It may be successful there. Very different things will be successful over here. So the evolution's been, it's been rapid. There is no set blueprint for it. It's going places. So absolutely, from a theater evolution perspective, no theater groups existed. I mean, if you go back 15 years, if you talk about English-speaking theater, there were 3 groups, a total of 3 groups, 2 or 3 groups putting up combined between them 5 productions a year, maybe 6 at max. You went out to other language groups. There was one Hindi-speaking group, maybe one Arabic theater group, putting up total of 1 production between 2 years. That was what theater was. And in the middle of that, you want to open up a space that focuses on local talent rather than importing talent. And that's where, I completely agree with Bharatanatyam. Dubai has been telling the story of, look, come to us. We've got Chicago coming from abroad. We've got Les Miserables coming from London. We've got the Motley Productions from India coming over to put up something. Great. These things are beautiful. They're wonderful and people should experience them. But then what about our stories? What about things coming out of Dubai? And we're not so good at telling that story of what's coming out of Dubai, what's homegrown. And homegrown is going to be messy. Day one, it's not going to turn into Les Miserables. It's not going to turn into The Lion King on day one. On day one, it's going to be messy. It's going to be dirty. It's going to feel like, what was this? But you got to give it time. And when you allow it to breathe, when you allow people to learn from their mistakes, when they hear from the audience that worked, that did not work, they're going to start improving. When they start seeing competition, they're going to start improving. But for competition to exist, it's got to be an easy, low barrier to entry for people to come in and perform and not feel like they had to put half their life savings in ensuring a play went up or a performance went up. Some of the most expensive places in the world, the amount of money that we pay on applications to just put up a play, to just rent a space, to just be able to get in on stage without an audience and just say hello on stage. It's expensive. So how do we make it easier for people? How do we inculcate that at the early career level, at the kids level, where they're learning this in school and they're not thinking about, okay, let's move to XYZ places in the world because there's no future here. That's changing. That's definitely changing. Has it gotten there? No. But I can see it'll get there in the next couple of years. The growth is exponential. Every few years, the leaps feel exponential. So yeah, absolutely.
The one thing you made me think of is that we're on the receiving end of a larger strategy as well, right? Like everything else in this city. So the moment, and I, go back to the change in legislation, right, of enabling people to stay here and artist, visas and cultural visas, all these things. Like these are not just about being able to be here, right? It's about then the mentality is shifting from transience, or temporality to like, oh, okay, I'm going to invest here. And this work that we all do is an investment of your soul, right? So, and what that means is that, this work anywhere else in different contexts is also bolstered by community that shares, this belief of investment into, a place or a culture or a space or a community, but if here, you're surrounded by people trying to like worry about, their next gig or their next job or their next, visa renewal, or am I gonna, get into school here? And like you're constantly surrounded by people who are trying to make, their lives run, and not really sure, like a certain sense of precarity. That makes it hard for people to ask people really to spend that time and give that, that extra effort to put a play together. Like I spend a lot of time in different, Arab cities as well, and, different contexts where, where these spaces, whether it's theater or film and so on, and the way that things are made, a lot of it is through the love of the craft, right? So you have people that are just like showing up, like they'll just show up to put something up. It'll help you to, to set up your stage lights. They'll help you put something together. And so what the Junction has done, and I'm sure your center as well, in your own, context, is really like the gravity, of the scale of being able to build community is so much harder because you're fighting against that, sense of like precarity and everybody in their own zone or everybody in their own problem. Whereas in other places, the barrier to entry financially, but also psychologically, is very low. People have time, people have sense of, existing or security.
And also the barrier to entry culturally. They've grown up seeing performing arts, seeing dance, seeing cinema, not mainstream, but independent cinema. They've grown up seeing theater in and right out of school. Over here, that's coming in now. So we'll see the effects of it coming up. But spaces didn't exist. So what are you seeing? You're going and seeing the big Broadway shows. Those are nice once in a blue moon, but you want to see the scrappy things that young teens, young adults put up. You want to go see production houses experimenting with a story, and then see how the audience reacts to it. To Bhutena's point, you get these writers who are visiting who now stay a little longer, who can run workshops. Last year, the Junction ran a director's program because one of the things we started discovering is, we got quite a few actors over here in the city. Directors are few and far. So who's going to captain these ships? Who's going to sail with it? So we kind of took in a director's program and we could run a 10-month-long director's program, bringing in 8 new directors to come and just learn the craft. Because where are they going to go to learn it? They go out, it becomes transient. They go out, they stay out. They're like, listen, great, I'm getting work in London, I'm going to stay there. Getting work in Mumbai, I'm just going to stay there. So where are you going to go?
For me, I think primarily taking in from everything that both Gautam and Bhutina have put in, there's a sense of sometimes, like for Bharatanatyam, the OG place is Chennai. You need to be in Chennai to pursue Bharatanatyam seriously. Why not in Dubai? Why not in Dubai, and why not from a young age? Why can't Dubai be a hub for Indian culture? Why can't you learn authentic art from any other place? So for me, it really meant not everybody could afford the time to go to Chennai and learn. As a child, say 6 or 7 years of age, how affordable or how feasible is it for a parent to travel to Chennai with a child to just learn the art form authentically? And why do you have to wait until a certain age, until when the child is independent, to travel and do it themselves? What are you doing with all the young, fresh minds? Why not create a space where they can learn the form in its most authentic self while they're young? Why can't we train the brain and the mind and the creativity when they're very, very young, when they have a fresh slate and time at hand? So that's where it began. And at 16 or at 18, let's presume the child just decides that I'm not going to dance anymore and I'm going to focus on something else. Have they really lost out on their time is the real question. Yes, art is expensive. Yes, putting up a play, putting up a dance production, it is expensive. It involves money. But so is education. So is education. What guarantee do you have that a child goes into a business school and he won't drop out from there? What guarantee do you have that the child has passed out of a business school and they will land up in a certain job?
There are studies right here.
Yeah. We have so many stories of people learning in IITs and then going into an MBA and then just doing something entirely different. So yes, there was a point or a generation that focused on education because the background was entirely different. I think now we have a background who has focused on education. They've done their thing and they've also understood that art is of value. To slow down is of value. To take time off is of value. And like Bhutina said, COVID somewhere has taught us all how to deal with uncertainty, how to deal with ourselves sitting inside a room in silence and just being there, being in the now.
Exploring these creative sides to yourself. I think COVID did that quite a bit on a positive as well. People went, okay, why haven't I, gone and caught that independent movie which I've been thinking about catching? Why haven't I gone and learned an art form? Why haven't I invested in myself? And people started taking that a lot more seriously. To your point, parents nowadays, we're seeing a lot more parents coming to us and saying, yeah, I'm open to letting my child go to film school. I'm open to letting my child go into, because, again, coming from very traditional societies, there were traditional professions that people wanted their kids to get into. And then a second tier, and then arts came into the third tier, right? This is not a career you get into, right? Now it's, in the last 10 years, I think the Junction has written well over 100 plus college recommendation letters, kids who worked with us backstage, on stage. Parents are more willing to tell kids, yeah, go learn the art form. So definitely.
And parents are also willing to risk it.
Yes,
in the
absolutely.
sense, it's okay if the child does not pursue arts, because they know that beyond being a performer, beyond being a singer, there are other careers. Like if you were to learn dance, you could be a dance photographer, you could be a dance critic. There could be so many things that you explore, not just being a performer. Like I said, I was aspiring to become a performer. I never dreamt I would be a teacher. Some point, the interest shifted. I don't enjoy performances as much now, but I love going into a class full of kids and just giving them what I have in my head fresh today. So that's where I feel the change has happened.
And I think in Dubai we get that added responsibility of being kind of the custodians of feeding the non-converted. Like we're not singing to the choir. Sometimes we are, right? There's a percentage of our audience that's always going to be the cinephiles that already know like every film this director has made or follows
Come
theater.
to every show that you announce.
Every show they're there, But then the majority are curio, right? People who are kind of like finding out like what does this mean?
There's
and
a
I think
cinema
that
here?
is amazing. Yeah, but like what that can mean in terms of, let's say, your audience is, I find it a lot more interesting when I have, a realtor or a doctor or a surgeon or, or whatever, an actuary, in the audience watching our films than a cinephile, because what you can do to influence the way they think about, the world or the future or what matters or what doesn't matter or hierarchy or history, through film or through all of our different mediums is so much more valuable, because ultimately art is what shapes us, right? It shapes our memories, our colors, our language, our ideas about the world, our frames of reference, how our values are even like translated through the things that we read and we touch and we pursue, and the films that we have ingrained in our memory, right? And I think that's the responsibility, but also the pleasure, of being able to do that for so many people. Because to me, if an architect walks into the space, and watches a film and changes their idea about perhaps, what the city of a future can look like, through a sci-fi film from Nigeria, that's way more interesting, than, okay, like, we're now going to talk about how the sound recording was done, and that's always cool. I like to see that, dedicated cinephile. But I think that added layer in a city like this that's really concerned about the future and is at the epicenter of the changing world order, I think is way more, way more interesting and way more consequential even. Because what we do is not just like arts, it's not just tangential. It is, life itself. And that doesn't just mean like how we feel or, all the kind of the soft skills. It's really like what makes us us. And in a city that's talking about, at the forefront of AI and futurism and all these ideas, how can art be integrated into that? How can our different forms really give us as a human species, the added value of what ideas we're going to put forward when everybody else's job is going to be done by a machine? I think those things are incredibly important, and I don't think yet, from a strategy perspective, they have been enmeshed. The other thing that I also really think about a lot is what is the specificity of what we do here in the Dubai context, right? Like, what is it that's something that is very Dubaian that you can get here? What I mean by that is, in the past, when we grew up, it was always about like getting you the best, world-class conveniences, facilities, art forms, sports, etc. We had, rugby and Waitrose and whatever, that was like the standard. And I think people don't come here for that anymore. You get that. That's always good to have, but I think what we have an edge to offer is what Dubai is, right? Which is basically a smorgasbord of the global South, Southwest Asia, North Africa, Central Asia as well now to a large degree, in our populations and communities and art forms and, food and practices and, and mannerisms as well that we should be leading with. It shouldn't be like, oh my God, I discovered this thing, It shouldn't be, this is
that should
changing.
be front and center.
It should be front and center. And, like the dance that you offer should be part of the mainstream, where ballet was the mainstream. And I think that is also changing. We're still in the very early stages of it, but I think there is also a sense of like, I think self kind of celebration and reflexiveness about the populations that really represent, this place and what makes it unique. You come to Dubai, you want to drink chai, and chai should be our drink, and we should celebrate it. And I think that's changing now, And Dubai chocolate was like kind of a, the Labubu metaphor for the city,